Hi folks, I'm Moulton Avery, founder and director of the National Center for Cold Water Safety, and today I'm going to talk to you about keeping your cool in the heat. It's June 27th, 2021, and the Pacific Northwest is in the middle of an unprecedented heat wave. Right now I'm standing in my backyard in Vancouver, and the temperature is 111 Fahrenheit. It seemed like a good time to demonstrate the power of evaporative cooling, and something that you can use on the trail when you're working around the house, but also out on the water when you're paddling. I've been out here for about 4 minutes, and even with the lovely breeze that we have, I'm starting to get pretty warm. But I'm going to wait a while until I start to really heat up, and then I'm going to use the garden hose to soak the t-shirt and the shorts. The idea here is that when I get this clothing wet, the water is going to start to evaporate from the clothes, and that's a cooling process, and it's very, very efficient at removing body heat. So it's actually the best possible way that you can work with your clothing and with water to cool yourself off on a very hot day. The coolest place in the backyard right now is on the surface of the lawn in the shade. And that's where our adopted stray cat, little Mink Mink, has taken up residence. Right now, the temperature on that lawn on the surface in the shade is 93 degrees. She didn't have to have a class to figure that out. She's just experimented, and she's sprawled out there, and that's the coolest place that she can get some relief from the heat, because she's not really big on getting sprayed with a hose. Oh, I've been out here for about 10 minutes now, and it's really getting hot. So I'm going to take the hose and just squirt myself off and get my clothes nice and wet and come back and tell you how I feel. Here we go. Whoa. Oh man, it's always a shock at first. God, that stuff is cold. Oh man, what a difference that is. It's incredible. You get that water on you, and it's cold to begin with, and then it starts feeling a little more comfortable. But now the breeze that you saw a little earlier, that's helping this water to evaporate off of my clothing, and I don't feel hot anymore. It's very comfortable. In fact, it feels a little cool. It feels like it's about 72, 73 degrees out here, just by wetting the t-shirt and wetting the swimming trunks. But what if you're working outside or you're paddling and you're a little concerned about sunburn? You notice I don't have anything covering my arms or legs. So if I was sitting in a kayak, particularly a sit-on-top kayak, or if I was paddling a paddleboard, or sitting in any kind of like a canoe with an open cockpit, and the sun was beating down on my legs, and I was concerned about sun protection, it seems counterintuitive, but the thing to do is to put on a long sleeve shirt and long pants and get those wet. And that provides you with more cooling, and it also protects you from the sun. So that's what I'm going to get into next. I have a nice shirt here from my paddling club, the Oregon Ocean Paddling Society, or OOPS. Nice looking shirt. This thing is made entirely of synthetic fiber, so it's not going to stay wet as long as a cotton shirt would, simply because the polyester fiber doesn't absorb as much water. It'll dry out faster. So if you had to choose between one or the other when you're trying to keep cool, then cotton is the better fiber to use. So that's this long sleeve shirt. And I've also got a pair of long pants that I'm going to put on. and we'll see how that works. And it's really, it's pretty amazing that as soon as I put these on, they're dry, they're still dry, I begin to get hot again. So I've lost the benefit of the evaporative cooling that I was getting with the wet t-shirt and the wet swimming trunks. So I'm gonna hit the hose again. It's really hot with this stuff on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. God. The water coming out of that hose is about 55 degrees, and I gotta tell you, it's quite a contrast. And now, here I am, long sleeve shirt, long pants, outside, completely comfortable. You lose a lot of heat from your head, and so you should take advantage of that. Wet your hair, and if you happen to have a hat, like I do here, you want to get that wet as well. I'm going to spray this thing. I want the water to soak right into this fabric. Get it loaded up with as much water as I can. Woo! Some on my head, get the hair all wet. Put on the hat. That's even better than it was before I put the hat on, because now I'm getting even more evaporative cooling. And this evaporation just pulls heat off of your body, and it is a great way to keep cool. All right, now let's talk about paddling on cold water when it's this hot. Dress for the water temperature. A lot of people think, well, that's crazy because if I'm wearing a wetsuit or dry suit, I'm gonna have a heat stroke. And yeah, that's absolutely true, except for the fact that you can use evaporative cooling to keep yourself cool with a wetsuit or a dry suit. My wetsuit is about 6 millimeters thick. It's a long sleeve shorty. So this is what it looks like right here. It comes to my thighs. It's got long sleeves, 6 mil. If I wore this in the backyard today at this temperature without getting the wetsuit wet, it wouldn't be too long before I'd have a fatal heat stroke, because I just couldn't offload that much heat. And this is pretty thick neoprene, and it would tend to hold my body heat in. So again, the key is to get this wetsuit soaking wet, get it as wet as you possibly can. So I'm just gonna take the hose and spray this wetsuit. I want to get the whole thing soaking wet. Get a handy hat on my head. Okay. That's 6 millimeters of neoprene, and it feels comfortable. Like it's about 75 degrees out here. As long as the surface of this wetsuit stays saturated and the water evaporates from the wetsuit, I'm gonna be cool. The amount of water that a wetsuit absorbs is going to depend on the fabric. Now, some of these wetsuits, they shed water just like a duck. They will not absorb any water on the surface of the suit, and you can't use those directly for evaporative cooling. However, you can put a long sleeve cotton shirt over the top of the wetsuit and get that wet. And as the water evaporates from the cotton shirt, it's gonna cool the wetsuit and it's gonna offload that excess heat. So regardless of whether the wetsuit absorbs water or not, you can still use evaporative cooling. The same thing goes for a dry suit. Most of these dry suits have a Gore-Tex layer underneath the surface fabric, and it's the Gore-Tex layer that keeps that wetsuit watertight. But the fabric on the surface will absorb water. And so you can wet it down however you're going to do that, with a sponge, splashing, wading into the water, rolling, holding onto somebody else's kayak and dipping yourself in the water. It doesn't matter how you do it, but as long as you keep the fabric wet, and again, wet your hair, wear a wet hat, and keep that clothing system wet, you're going to be able to beat the heat. The humidity out here is right now is so low that my hair is already drying out, which is interesting. That certainly doesn't happen in Virginia, where we lived 4 years ago. The humidity there is higher, and high humidity interferes with evaporation, so you can be sweating and the sweat's just dripping off of you, and it doesn't evaporate as quickly. But out here, hair's starting to dry out, wetsuit's starting to dry out. So as that happens, as the water evaporates from the clothing, you're going to begin to feel hot again, and that's your cue to re-wet the system. Wet your hair, wet your head. Obviously, today is extreme, but I picked today because it gives you a great example of how powerful this system of evaporative cooling can be. Hi again. It's Sunday. We're still in the middle of this heat wave, and right now it's about 115 degrees out here in front of my house in Vancouver, Washington. But that's not the only thing. If you look behind me, that's asphalt pavement, and it soaks the heat up like a sponge. The temperature on the surface of that asphalt pavement is 160 degrees, which is a lot hotter than you're going to ever find kayaking on the water. I'm in direct sunlight. I'm starting to get really warm. I've been out here for about 10 minutes now. I want to be absolutely clear about the choice that you have if you're outdoors in this kind of weather, particularly if you're exercising, hiking, bicycling, kayaking, canoeing, paddleboarding, whatever it happens to be. This kind of an environment places a burden on your heart and your blood vessels. That's essentially what heat stress is. It's a burden that the environment places on your body. Right now, even with the evaporation of sweat, I'm experiencing heat stress. And in fact, the manifestation of that heat stress is the fact that I'm sweating. When you sweat, you lose body fluid. You have to replace it by guzzling water. It's a vicious cycle. You have a very simple choice. You either sweat and lose body fluid, or you wet your clothes and finesse this situation so that you're comfortable, so that you're not experiencing heat stress.